Oh, forgot that I need to switch it over here real quick. Sorry about that. Just give me like 3 seconds here. Oh, nope, not what I wanted. There we go. All right, there we go. Yeah, I'm about to tell you now. I was just trying to get it set up because this was I'm doing things a little bit different than what I'm used to. I normally just do a video, but I've kind of fell into some tough times. So the way that I normally do things is changing for the meanwhile. It's not going to be long lasting, but I'm just trying to make sure I at least speak to the people, whether it's 10 people, 100 people, or even 3 right now. But anyway, I'm just got to switch over to the screen here. There we go. But what I'm looking at right now is the potential for severe weather down the line here. I actually haven't had too much chance to look at the forecast models because of what I had going on. But yeah, basically some of the stuff that I've usually used, I've had to pay for via subscription. I actually have been out of work for almost a month and a half. So as a result, some of my stuff that I have is currently on hold because, well, I haven't been able to pay for it until recently. But in the short term, we're actually going to be expecting some severe weather down the line here, especially from tomorrow onward. This might be in a jumbled up order, partially due to the fact that I'm not used to doing things in this format. But for example, like tomorrow, we have a slight risk. I've been talking about this with a few people on Discord about this setup here. Potential for all hazards are possible. We've been even keeping a closer eye on that tornado threat. Right now, it's only a 2%, but I wouldn't rule out a 5%. I'll put it that way. The hail threat's going to be the big threat. The wind threat's going to probably remain pretty low. I do think the tornado threat is partially conditional, mainly due to the amplitude of this trough here. And there's not really strong evidence of convergence and divergence here by basically looking at this level of the atmosphere. So it's questionable as to whether we get anything going. If it does happen, it looks like it's going to be more so earlier in the morning. So I won't be going live for that one because I'll probably be at work. But this isn't the only day that I'm looking at, as you saw earlier. If we go back, you can actually see that there's a day 5 slight risk here. It's going to be mainly over towards Texas Panhandle and west central Oklahoma. This day has already been talked about for a little bit. All hazards are possible. What I want you to pay attention to is the amplitude of the trough here. This is us going into the weekend, and this is the day of the 24th. Look at how this trough ends up digging here. And that's going to be the key component in getting storms to fire here. You're not going to get a great look at it from this point in the atmosphere. Really, you want to go towards about 500 millibars instead of 300. So I'm going to go ahead and actually freeze this loop right here so you can actually get a look at what I'm talking about. So look at how this trough is starting to dig. It's still a positively tilted trough, but it's kind of elongated like this last one. And while it's not the most stout trough that I've ever seen, I do see some evidence, while albeit faint, of some confluence and diffluence. Basically what confluence and diffluence is air rushing in, and then diffluence is air rushing out. Basically, it's the same thing. It's a lot like convergence and divergence, but with us looking at a lower level of the atmosphere like this, 500 millibars versus 3, you're looking for confluence and diffluence here. And it's usually represented by this right here, this mark right here, if I can get this thing to work. I don't know. You should be able to see this marking. Let me know if you don't. If I If you can't see it, I need to change the window capture here. Like I said, I'm kind of new to the way I'm doing this here, so mistakes might be made. I'm just being completely honest. But, okay, you guys don't see it. Let me fix that. Let me go ahead and change over the source here. Just give me 1 second. Like I said, I'm kind of new to this. I'm a little thrown off. Okay, there you go. Now you can see it. But yeah, that little spot here where you see that little bit of a clearing in between that this purple and reddish area over here and here, you can see air rushing away. But that's a diffluence here, but you'll see confluence occur as we go forward here. If this will go, come on now. Oh man, computer's acting up. All right, so there's our point of confluence and diffluence here, where that's our diffluence here. Watch how it fills back in within the next frame right there. But as long as we have that going, there's a chance of storms firing in that region. That's one of the first signs to look for with severe weather. As we continue to go forward here, this is why I don't really care to do this live too much, because you'll just see me kind of flipping in between the loop mode and the singular image. That's no problem, Cruz. I appreciate it. I didn't expect really to get any views from this. I'm just trying to make sure I'm touching base so people can see what the forecast is really. So like I said, you're good, dude. Don't worry about it. No need to apologize. Oh wow. Yeah, it's acting up big time here. Okay. Also, another thing with this trough here, towards the backside of it, we could be seeing some winter weather come into play here. I do think some cold air is going to rush in towards the backside of this. With the moisture that it has the potential to pull from both the Pineapple Express region here towards the Pacific, along with additional energy from the Gulf, we could get some pretty significant snow on the backside of this here. So after this storm system moves out, could see another chance of severe weather over here towards the deep south next week on Thursday, towards the 27th, that we might have to keep an eye on as well. This also could maybe bring some winter weather towards the northeast. I find it unlikely though. I think it's going to be a little too warm, but this could set the stage for the next storm system here. We'll go to the GFS to get a better look at that. The thing with the euro is that the euro goes only to 240 hours. GFS goes to 384. Just waiting on this to load here. Like I said, you're seeing everything real time. There's no edits here, unfortunately. This is just kind of the hand I'm dealt right now, since I'm waiting for my check to come in so I can turn everything back on. Jeez, everything isn't working today. But here's that same trough that's going to be coming into play for this week, and then the following week. Here's that big trough to start out on Sunday. This is where that area of interest that I'm talking about is still occurring right now. And then after that, there's that chance of winter weather, but GFS isn't really quite as hot on that as the euro is. After that, Here's that next storm system coming in. It looks a little bit more stout on GFS as well. Has that little bit of a ski jump look to it. There's our area of interest for confluence diffluence here. I'm questioning the warm sector based on the look of this right here, so I'm not entirely sold on this storm system being super intense on the severe side, but there's a chance for it, of course. And of course, cold air rushing in on that backside could result in some snow, maybe towards the Midwest. And it's also going to result in pretty significant pattern change over here towards the eastern half of the U.S. We're going to be seeing a lot more below average temperatures. You'll see that reflected in the temperature map momentarily here. But then you see another really stout trough behind that. And I think this system, as we get into the beginning of April, is going to be really impressive in comparison to that one before it. Screen will just not go away, will it? I'm also interested to see just how this will end up performing as we go into the second here. So it does look like we get this ridge going here, which is going to allot for a nice warm sector out ahead of what will probably be a pretty large cold front. So that could be a point of interest as far as storm development is concerned. Then as we go from that point onward, looks like we start out the end of the first week of April, maybe kind of leveling out. But I'm pretty sure this is only going to be momentary. So here's that temperature map that I've been talking about. Just give it a second to load here. I think I have too many screens up at once, and maybe that might be. So close this out. We'll keep moving here. That might have solved the problem. We'll see. So here we are right now, and what I want you to remember is whenever we see this cold air start to dip south, that's usually because of the troughs that we were seeing just a second ago. Whenever you see that warm air start to rise to the north, that's because of a ridge. Try to do the best illustration that I can here. Like for example, this will be an example of a ridge, is this part right here. And then if I were to keep this ball rolling here, so to speak, I'm going to wait till we get a little bit of a dip here. This is what a trough is looking like right around here, where you see that cold air starting to dip. So that's pretty much what we're going to be seeing throughout the course of the next couple weeks here. So our temperatures are going to be affected, and that's going to be a big topic. But what I really want you to pay attention to with the temperatures as we go forward is going to be watch what happens as we get towards the middle part of the month here. There's our ridge, and then look at how this cold air slowly begins to sneak in and take over the eastern half of the U.S. as we go further along here. This is getting right towards the end of March. There's a really big storm system right there. You can see that cold air and warm air interacting. That warm sector is going to be the point of interest for severe weather. And then we'll see that cold air begin to really take over here. This is a great example right here towards April 1st. Unfortunately, this might not be an April Fool's joke. Could be a pretty frigid morning for some of you. Not the coldest that we've seen, but definitely a bit of a wake-up call. That even though it's the start of spring, it can still be cold. Then after that, we start to eventually see some warming reoccur over here towards the heart of the country as we go towards the 5th, which is likely going to set the stage for severe weather as we go further down the line here. The dew points are going to be another factor here. We're going to be looking mainly for this little moisture tongue or a moisture nose, so to speak. Just basically where we see these increased dew points making a sense to the north here, and then this little point of contrast right here where we're seeing dew points towards the 30s, and then that contrast leading to 50, 60 degree dew points. The sharper the contrast usually is a good indicator of a frontal boundary, sometimes even a dry line, depending on which region you are looking at, and that's going to be a point of interest for storm development as well. But seeing those moist dew points, usually you're going to be looking for 50, 55 degrees or above. you see that up against a boundary, there's usually a good chance of storm development. And you kind of see a little bit of an indicator of that as we go from the 24th to the 25th, especially towards South Texas. Then we see this continue to occur here as we go into the 21st, which is going to be the 25th, excuse me. And then as we continue to go on here, you start to see that little contrast kind of drop off a bit here. Albeit there is a little bit of potential over here towards the Gulf Coast states and maybe towards southern Bama and southern Georgia here. And of course Florida as well. Eventually you see another little moisture tongue try to develop here as we go right towards the end of the month. And maybe again towards southeastern Texas could be a point of interest right before the end of the month, and then eventually towards the Gulf Coast here. That warm and moist sector seems like it's going to mainly be hampered to the south here. That's going to be largely due to the troughing that we were talking about earlier. Then after that, here's that next storm system. This one looks a little bit more stout, but what we're looking for at this point in time, since we're 318 hours out, is going to be a trend. And the trend we're looking for is really going to be in how far does this moisture nose pop to the north here. Because I think the battle zone would really be more towards Missouri as it stands right now. Eventually that is going to drop south a little bit because we want everything to come together if we're looking for severe weather. We're looking for more than just one particular parameter being good in one spot, because it takes multiple parameters to get severe weather going, especially when it comes to tornadoes. So as we continue to go forward, we can see that moisture return just doesn't end up being super impressive. Really, like I said, we need a lifting mechanism like a low pressure system or frontal boundary to take advantage of something like this. And the evidence is somewhat there, but with us being so far out, I would almost call the data at this point somewhat inconclusive. But like I said, at this point in time, when you're looking at this range, you're looking more for a trend. But one trend that I'm already seeing towards the end of this model run is the return of moisture beginning to come back into play, even though there's no troughing in place once we get towards the 5th. So the 5th might be the 5th and beyond might be a time that I watch really closely to see just exactly what the trend will be as we continue to go forward here. So I guess I'll wrap this up at this point now, and I'll go ahead and take a look at what the precipitation type could be. So we'll let this load, and then I guess we'll be done here. Like I said, this is a little bit of an awkward mode for me to be in. I normally don't live stream forecasts, but just trying to make sure I touch base with the people, whether you've been following for 2 minutes or 2 years. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years. Just wanted to make sure I at least tried to touch base and let you know what's going on from my perspective. But that being said, this is what we're currently dealing with here. If it'll load. Uh-oh. I guess we'll have to refresh it here. Hopefully it'll work. And this is kind of why I don't do these forecasts here, because this does sometimes take up a lot of CPU to get these to load. And then on top of that, with the struggles I have now, I don't have anything that's ad free, so I do tend to struggle with CPU occasionally, especially since you just have to battle with the ads now. Again, I apologize. We'll be back to the old format soon enough. Just kind of bear with me through it. That's all I'm really asking at this point. There we go. It's working now. But here's that area of low pressure here that we're going to be looking for when it comes to our severe weather threat tomorrow. Again, I think the main threat was going to be hail. Due to the positioning of that low, I just don't think we're going to get too much in the way of supercells to form. Lack of daytime heating also comes into play with this as well. So like I said, you're going to see storms early in the day, but I don't expect anything major. Some of it may even actually be more impressive offshore. And then as this next storm system comes in right around the 24th and the 25th, that cold air that wraps in and meets up with that moisture Here's that chance of snow that I'm talking about here towards central Nebraska, central Kansas coming into play now. So that low ends up moving off to the northeast, and this, as a result, could result in a little bit of snow towards the UP, towards northern Wisconsin, northern parts of Minnesota, but this will be a pretty quick mover. The next couple systems beyond that point, there is a little bit of activity to watch towards Florida as we get towards the end of the month. I've been anticipating some increased activity towards Florida. Don't necessarily see anything in the way of severe weather at the moment, but we've seen a lot of Florida magic recently. I wouldn't be surprised to see more, so be on your P's and Q's if you're over towards the peninsula in particular. Panhandle too, but I think if there's going to be anything, it's going to be more so towards the peninsula. Even though it probably will be only a marginal risk, maybe a slight risk if you really optimal conditions, still definitely something you want to pay close attention to. We've had a lot of tornadoes this year in Florida already. In fact, that's one of the state leaders when it comes to tornadoes this year. Here's that next storm system I was talking about towards the 27th, 28th. You can actually see how much moisture is wrapping into that cold air here, and you're starting to see some heavier snow towards the Dakotas and then eventually towards Nebraska and Kansas. Eventually, this will move off to the east here, mainly staying in a warm sector. So looks like the Northeast is going to be spared a winter event here. Maybe towards the higher elevations, you could see a brief period of snow here as we close out the month of March heading into April. Here's our next system to follow up on that. Like I said, expecting increased activity towards the Midwest over here. I think this could be right along the frontal boundary. Could result even in a squall line or even a bow echo possibly, but kind of hard to tell at this time frame. So not going to read into that too heavily at the moment, but just more or less calling out what I see at this point. If we look at time frame towards the 3rd here, you can kind of see the same thing going on, although the frontal boundary isn't that impressive at this point. A lot of our ingredients just don't seem to be coming together at this point in time. Then after that, we'll watch that storm system head out, and we'll see our next system off to the northwest coming in, starting to see increasing amounts of snow towards that region. And we're going to, of course, also be dealing with a cool down over towards a large part of the eastern half of the U.S. Not going to be frigid, but it's going to definitely feel a lot different than what we've been experiencing here. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this experiment. It's a little new to me, but it's kind of a thing that we're having to do by necessity, unfortunately, at the moment. So bear with me maybe about a week or two, and we'll have everything back to the way we've been running it. Appreciate your patience. Just, like I said, bear with me here. We're going to do what we can to get back up and running. But thank you again. I'll see you soon. It's Tyler Metalhead Weatherman signing out.